idea of meta governance, constitutions, the idea that blockchains need some form of governing principles that are explicitly there and understood. Some of you know I invested 20 million to Carnegie Mellon University to set up a center for formal mathematics. One of the things that the center is trying to do, and it's somewhat analogous to where we're at as an ecosystem, is it's trying to capture mathematics as mathematicians understand it, which is built to communicate to other mathematicians, and make it machine understandable. So take things that were in LaTeX or handwritten, things that exist in presentation code, but not in code that a machine can have an opinion on, and get it constructively to a point where a machine could understand it. Now, this is one of the hardest things you can do, and it's the first time math has gone for a major rewrite in 120 years since David Hilbert and the rest of the gang were running around like Gödel and Turing and so forth. Now, analogously, there's a question of how much should the ethics, the integrity, the soul, the intentions of the system be machine understandable? Because if they're machine understandable, you can then build protocols that can actually operate on the intent and embed them as kind of a regulator of the system for all smart contracts. This comes up a lot in the privacy space. People want confidentiality and privacy, but at the same time, they don't really like the consequences of confidentiality and privacy in certain areas. So while we would love to see dissidents in Russia who are protesting the war in Ukraine have a system that gives them the ability to freely associate and get funding and be able to express themselves and resist the government, at the same time, many people wouldn't like that same set of tools being used for child sex trafficking or terrorist financing. You see, same technology. So governance of these systems is very important. And you can't just trust a government, because if you trust the United States, for example, the same backdoors, the same process will inevitably be used by Russia or Iran or another government, China. You see, so these are complicated things. And the level of machine understandability of the ethics of the system, the intent of the system, are very important. Cardano is right up there with all of the best-in-class smart contracting systems. As the expressivity of the system grows, and as we add sidechains, every person who has something becomes a subset of Cardano, which effectively means that Cardano will eventually have more capabilities, in my view, than any other cryptocurrency, because we can, like the Borg, just absorb their technology over time. When we have all of that, because we have all these capabilities, millions of people will come in and use this technology in different ways. Some ways good, some ways not so good. Many people ask me, where did the name Cardano come from? It was Girolamo Cardano. Now, I picked him for good reason, because he wasn't a good person, but he wasn't a bad person. He was a nuanced person of the Italian Renaissance. Brilliant mathematician. He was a doctor, also a complete scoundrel. And he invented pieces of probability theory for gambling. He was the Pope's private physician, but also excommunicated from the church. He was a very interesting fellow, and I felt that was an appropriate name for a cryptocurrency. Sometimes cryptocurrencies are bad. Sometimes cryptocurrencies are good. And in our love and rush to embrace this new technology, we must be intellectually honest and wise enough to acknowledge the times that they are bad. The point of regulating structures are to figure out how do you blunt that. And we don't need a government or a regulator to do that. We can use the very same things that make a blockchain a trusted custodian, things like smart contracts and so forth. So the meta point of this governance experiment, as we move into this complete open source project throughout this year and build all these institutions, is a deep conversation about the Bill of Rights of Cardano, the Constitution of Cardano, the fundamental things that are difficult or damn near impossible to change, and making sure that those are established well and they're machine understandable to the extent where Cardano itself can then enforce that as people attempt to change it and update it for the future. This is probably the most ambitious part and most dangerous part of the Cardano project. We go from writing papers in science to things like real hard engineering to unsolved problems that may never fully be solved. There is no government in the world people are universally happy with. There is no policy or person so beloved that it is considered beyond reproach. Humans like diversity, which is why we have many languages, many cultures, many religions, and it's not going to change anytime soon. So no matter what we end up converging to, some people won't be happy. But if we do a good job, at least those people will be heard and still have a voice and still have a say and probably can still use the technology of Cardano for the things that they care about. That's the great challenge before us. So it's been a hell of a ride, and that's why it's so bittersweet. Everything changes, and you get to make sequels, but it's never quite the same as the original movie, and that's okay. And I know that we can get this done, though, because I got all of you, and there's a lot of really brilliant people in this community. We've built a relationship over the last 6 years. I'm never going to stop the AMAs. I'm never going to stop broadcasting live from warm, sunny Colorado, sometimes other places. Hell, I might even go to space one of these days. We got too many people that are in those circles for them not to sell me a ticket on one of those rockets. But despite all the shenanigans and the ups and downs and the craziness and just the daily grind, what makes this job so special and what makes everything so special is the fact that I really do get to work with the best people. And we're all on a mission together. We ultimately, at this company, want to improve the systems of the world for everyone everywhere. It's what we've always tried to set out to do. Come October, I'm going back to Bermuda. Many of you got on this boat either with the whiteboard video in 2017 or the TED Talk from 2014 that I did. That TED Talk in 2014, I made a lot of commitments and promises. I wrote a check that I didn't quite have the money to cash. I said, this technology is going to go change the developing world and bring economic identity to everybody. 8 years later, when we look back at all of this, it is really remarkable and amazing that it looks like we can actually cash that check now. The technology is evolving to the point where people in the developing world can live completely within the crypto ecosystem. Don't believe me? Look at El Salvador and the experiment they're running. An enormous progress has been made in Southeast Asia and in Africa. The third largest adopter of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is Nigeria in the world. That's just 8 years. It went from nothing to that. And it's going to be good to go back and show it. Like what Paul Halmos used to say, tell them what you're going to do it, and tell them what you did. And so in October, my hope is to be able to show you what we did and hopefully inspire the next generation to take it even further than we ever could and really build up a great stack. And I believe if we accomplish that, and I believe if we get there, our best days are ahead of us. At the end of the day, this is the technology of freedom. It always has been. And it's the technology that puts you back in control of your life, for better or for worse. There are so many people running around the world who are cynical and pessimistic and love tearing people down or telling you what you can't do or who you are and what your place in life is. I'd like to believe you get the decision about that. If you want to outsource stuff, if you want to trust others, go ahead. It's your decision. But at the very least, shouldn't you have a say in it? In all things, the way you vote, the money in your pocket, your future. That to me feels like freedom. And for that to work, you need tools and systems and institutions that agree with that. Something that's disturbed me more than anything else of the last 13 years, from the foundations of cryptocurrency and before to today, is it seems like we're moving in the opposite direction as a collective society. Every day that goes by, we seem to lose a little bit more of our self-sovereignty, a little bit more of a say in the world as a whole. And cynicism is dialed up to the maximum, saying, well, that's the inevitable decline. That's the entropy of society. This is just the way that the world is going to work now. Deal with it. I don't want to believe that. I don't want to believe that the end result of humanity is going to be controlled by the few to manage the evils of the many. I want to believe it's the many working together in a harmonious society without needing the few. If we're going to get there, we need to demonstrate that. And this is the next challenge for us as an ecosystem. We've gotten as far as we can go with the tools, people, and vision of the few. And as that gets closed up and we have great commercial comparability and sustainability, and you'll see all the magic of Cardano, there's real brilliance there. And it'll kick the crap out of the people who've always kicked us when we're down and said we can't. And that'll be satisfying. But the real challenge is, how do we get to the next level, which is us working together? The real challenge is, how do we build a global governance system? How do we reinvent certain things that need to be reinvented? New institutions built with new principles. It's a little terrifying. It's real hard. In the next few years, this is going to be the struggle. However, if we solve it for Cardano, we solve it for every organization and government in the world. And you start realizing you don't need kings, you don't need presidents, you don't need CEOs, you don't need people at the top. We can do it right here at the bottom. That's a revolutionary idea, but at least America used to be in the business of revolutionary ideas. That's where we started from, sometimes too much. And so keeping up with my kinsmen and the history of my country, I'd like to add that idea to the pyre. But what's so cool about it, by definition, is self-determination. Means that it's as much your choice as it is mine. And you have to decide if that's as ambitious as we want to be, or maybe less so, or maybe more so. Who knows? Cardano's yours. And that's a good thing. So I hope these updates give you guys a little bit of view. Of course, I'll add some more after all the workshops are done. And again, we'll see you guys at Consensus, and maybe some of you guys in Bermuda. And there's going to be a lot of real cool things this year. Got the Vossel hard fork in June, and then we have another one in October. A lot of real cool tech coming online. We see amazing progress in every single place you look, from TVL to DApp development. The numbers look phenomenal. Adoption, chain congestion's a good thing right now. You know, people say we're a ghost chain. I often say it's a pretty constipated ghost then. And then obviously we get invited to all the big events, and we get to meet all the people. Hard days, hard weeks, but we get through it. We do. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you guys soon. Cheers. Hi, everyone. This is Charles Hoskinson, broadcasting live from warm, sunny Colorado. Always warm, always sunny. Sometimes Colorado. Today is March 7th, 2022. And I have a few updates for everybody. So this is a big week for the entire Cardano project. Whole Cardano Foundation executive leadership, senior management is here in Colorado. And we're having a lovely time in a series of seminars, workshops, and discussions about structuring a better open source project for Cardano. So as many of you know, Cardano's code is under an open source license, but the curation of it has been rather federated in nature. And we've gotten to a point where there are so many people in the community, so many projects in the community. There's, I think, more than 400 dApps that are being built right now. A lot of those biased towards the second half of the year after the Vossel hard fork. But in any event, there's tons of engineers floating around in many different companies, from DC Spark to Twig to Well-Typed, and obviously our company and the foundation itself. And so there's a big question about how does one structure all of that and put all those pieces together. And we've been working really closely with a lot of different people in the last 9 months to have those conversations. And we're starting to converge on a strategy that will be kind of built in layers. And these workshops are a pivotal component of that. So we'll give you guys an update on the back end of them, of all the things discussed and we've learned, and commitments made, and hopefully maybe be able to get some timelines out about how new governance structures look at like. But we've looked at a lot of different successful open source projects. For example, the Mozilla Foundation, the Apache Foundation, the Linux Foundation, and we've tried to really look at how they handle everything from how does one become a contributor, how do you measure merit of contributions, what type of standards processes need to be followed. For example, Ethereum has things like EIPs and ERCs. Well, analogously, we have CIPs, and we're talking about what a standards process would look like. We're also examining things like formal methods, how far down that stack we want to go. There's an IO viewpoint on how to do formal methods, and all of those specifications are public. And you can see that we've connected those to the code. But moving forward, should we move to more of a polyglot ecosystem, or maintain Haskell as the reference client and then still maintain the same formal methodology? So these are all discussions that are being held. There's also a lot of discussions about documentation, training, and other such things. If you look at the Linux Foundation in particular, they do a very good job evangelizing open source and training people to become open source contributors. So there needs to be a whole pedagogy that's assembled there. Other things on the agenda are things like mastering Cardano, things on the agenda like special purpose courses for Plutus and for core technology of Cardano. I'm going to be attending a learning conference in London in May that actually has lots of vendors who specialize in these things. And my hope is to be able to outsource a big chunk of curriculum development from our internal education division to repeatable courses for the community. So we're having a lot of discussions along those lines, and there's a litany of other little things to deal with here and there. But all things considered, a lot of progress. There's also been a lot of talk about, well, what is the Cardano Vision 2025, 2027? As many of you know, I've repeatedly said that our goal is commercial comparability, sustainability, and self-determination as kind of a goalpost for this year. Things like pipelining and input endorsers, Mithril, sidechains, these things in that bucket really get us where we need to be in that first category. In terms of sustainability, there, things like UTXO HD, a lot of the improvements we've made to the system and optimizations we've made alongside Mithril, that sustainability category we think will be fine, meaning that the network can scale to millions to billions of users and it's not going to fall in on itself. And then finally, on self-determination, really have to get to a point where not only is there a bureaucracy that is very inclusive for the community, that bureaucracy is legitimized by the voting of the community, the endowment of the community. And this is somewhat implicit, but it needs to be made explicit through Catalyst. So we're well on schedule for all of these things. It's been a colossal effort. And I'd like to thank all the people involved in it. More than 500 people across multiple organizations have had a say, internal and external. It's been just a lot. Just getting Cardano done, this concept of, what is required to really make a great impact with Basho, Voltaire, and cleaning up the remainder things in Goguen and Shelley. It was certainly definitely a work in program and project management. And it's really impressive to see what's been done. But, rubber has to hit the road. A few other updates as well.